Hey, welcome back to the podcast. Today we're hanging out with Anthony, the member of the band Papadosio, and he also has his own solo music project called EarthCry. He founded the Ableton live educational platform called Seed to Stage, and has played major venues and festivals including Red Rocks Amphitheater, Bonnaroo, Electric Forest, the list goes on and on. We have a great conversation today about live looping. We talk about how to conceptualize and create a more engaging live performance. Talk about how he puts some secret samples and hidden messages in his music for fun. Talk a lot about live performance, amongst many other things and hacks and tools in the studio. Make sure you give Anthony a like, follow on the socials, and also check out his YouTube channel, Seed to Stage. It's really dope, as well as his website. Before we jump into the episode, I'd appreciate it if all of you out there would give a like or subscribe or follow wherever you're listening to the podcast, whether it's Apple Music or Spotify. If you don't hate me or the podcast, if you leave a review, that would really help me out as well, on Spotify specifically. And if you want to be the first to get new episodes and other fun random content I'll be sending out in the newsletter, then come hang out with me and join the newsletter. Just go to liveproducersonline.com/newsletter. You can join there and there's some more details and I'll send you cool stuff. Check back on Tuesdays, typically every 2 weeks, for new episodes. Much love for listening to the podcast. I appreciate all of the support, and let's check out this episode with Anthony. Nice setup in the background. What kind of panels are those?
These are, they're like the faced wood, but they're absorber panels that happen to have like kind of like a, I don't know, I think they like laser cut them or something, so that they not only absorb but also reflect back. So they kind of like absorb like lower mid range and then reflect back some of the top end. Makes the room sound bigger, I guess. I don't think I believe that they do as much as they say that they do. But as absorbers, they're pretty good.
Yeah, I have a friend who literally just saved like egg cartons for like 3 years and just did all of his own DIY acoustic paneling, and it sounds fantastic. Like, it really does.
Yeah, I'm presently building a studio, like an actual purpose-built studio in the basement of this house. The basement is like it's like a clear span crawl space. Had a bunch of piers, so we were down there like supporting the house literally on like scaffolding and knocking piers out and like doing all kinds of stuff. We brought a bunch of steel in, and the entire house is now sitting on steel beams, so I can have an 11-foot tall, 20-foot deep, and 15-foot wide space to turn into an actual, for the first time in my life, a purpose-built studio, which is like
cool.
So exciting.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. I've been seeing more advertisements for whatever reason. I'm getting targeted now for tiny homes.
Oh, great.
But I've seen like a couple like TikTok and Instagram reels of people buying these like $50,000 tiny homes and just turning them into studios in their backyard. That's like a real thing. A lot of people are starting to do now, I guess.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know a couple people on the other side of that trying to get out of it.
Yeah, there's that too. I don't know. The studio space struggle can be real depending on where you live.
Yeah.
Well, cool, man. Well, thanks for hanging out on the podcast. Love to get to know you a little bit better. I've followed Papadosio for a while now. I used to live in Indianapolis, and you guys toured through there a few times. I haven't had a chance to see your EarthCry project live, but hopefully you come back to Denver sometime in the near future. I can catch a show.
Yeah, we're actually oh great, I don't know what date it is. But I'm actually coming back to do a pre-party for Sonic Bloom.
Oh, dope. Yeah, I was going to go to that.
So I'm sure it's on this whole Linktree situation here. Yeah, it's on the 29th of April at Cervantes. I'm playing there.
Oh, sweet.
So that's happening. And then obviously Sonic Bloom as well. That's going down. That should be fun.
Yeah, Cervantes is fun. I like the diversity that they have at that venue. Some of my favorite venues like literally have all kinds of acts, like jam bandy or like some bassy wook night. Cervantes, they play it all, which it's a fun venue.
Seems like those worlds are kind of like blending together.
They slowly are.
Which
this
is
true. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, man, like for people who don't know much about you and for myself too, maybe share a little bit of your musical background and journey. We've got a lot of things we could talk about, and eventually maybe how that got you into Ableton Live.
For sure, yeah. So yeah, I'm in the the band Papadosio. We've been touring around for what is it now? 16 years, something like that.
It's been a while.
And yeah, I actually discovered Ableton Live at the same time that I decided to limit my costs in life. And I was living in a photo development room in the basement of this like super ancient old house in Athens, Ohio, with just a PC. And I think the cubic space in that room was like under 100. It was tiny. It was this tiny little like closet of a room, but all I had was me, a sleeping mat, a sleeping bag, a pillow, and a PC with Live 5 on it.
That's all you need.
And a Alesis Micron. Yeah, made the first Papadosio album down there using all Ableton Live. And what's really funny about it is that we never stopped using Ableton Live to make our albums. So we've been making the music, like the sketchboard using like Session View or whatever, and then the arrangement, and then we just recorded the drums into it. And, recently, of course, we've been going to studios and, doing a Pro Tools session and then exporting the waves, but still at the end of the day, the music ends up getting mixed down in Ableton Live, which I think is pretty funny and kind of it's just how it ended up happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you could think of like our whole musical journey thus far as sort of like a little love letter to this little cute piece of software that has allowed us to kind of do a bunch of the things that we've been trying to do. So yeah, on stage we improvise about 30% of the show, sometimes more, sometimes less, depending upon what's happening. But a lot of that improvisation is BPM oriented. So you could think of the music as sort of like dance music that has like elements of using the available technology to kind of create like a compelling, interesting thing where you have a band, but you also have all kinds of like edits, such as like, for example, like a filter sequence over top of a guitar or something like that, or the drummer has a drum pad and he's playing a drum rack with it, things like that. So yeah, musical background in terms of like anything educational. I did not go to college. I have actually been offered. I apologize about my son. I don't know what
nice.
he's saying.
Dad life.
Yeah. I've even been offered multiple jobs at colleges to teach, but I never went to college myself. And it's been funny because that's been the biggest barrier to entry there. Most colleges don't want to hire you if you don't have
a master's.
Yeah,
at least.
it's so funny.
Yeah,
it's like I was even offered a Riverside. I was offered a position. I wasn't actually offered the position, but the position came up. It was a tenured position in their music department at Riverside UC, and they didn't know that I didn't go to college. So that was like the end of the conversation. So it's funny that that's how that happened. And I'm also not Ableton certified either, which is funny.
Not yet.
Because
maybe someday.
Oh, I've been barking up that tree for years. They essentially every time they did a US event, for your listeners who aren't aware, if you want to become a certified trainer, you have to go to one of their in-person events. And every time they had an in-person event, we were on tour. Like there was no way I could have made that happen. And
yeah, but did you go through the interview process at the beginning, or you just didn't even try?
I didn't even try because I couldn't register. Like a band.
Yeah.
As you know, we were 6 months, 8 months, sometimes a year out with our scheduling. So I just knew it wasn't possible.
Yeah.
I've written them so many times, and hopefully, if I keep talking about it on all these podcasts, eventually they'll wisen up. And
yeah, bro, I think honestly, you would be a qualified candidate to be able to be a certified trainer. I mean, you've got, I don't even know how many hours of YouTube content that has a really good following. And I mean, one of the number one things they're looking for in certified trainers is somebody who's passionate about teaching, and you definitely have done that. So
yeah, we'll see what happens. I don't know if I keep bothering them. I feel like eventually they'll have to react to me.
Just keep blowing them up.
Yeah. So more recently, I have a side project, EarthCry, and then I have this YouTube channel, Seed to Stage, which is pretty much dedicated to Ableton Live. And among other things, I'm just trying to create an environment where people can learn how to do like what the band is doing on stage, which I feel like in general we're kind of entering a interesting space where right when these technologies were coming out and they were starting to become really salient, like mid 2000s, almost every act you'd see was using this technology with MIDI controllers. You saw MIDI controllers all over the stage. I remember seeing a Prefuse 73 set, and everything was on this table. And this guy was just trying to like figure it all out. There was just stuff connected to stuff, and it was so compelling. And I absolutely understand and appreciate the need for people to dance and congregate, and it's wonderful. And I'm glad that there's DJs in the world, but it's starting to get to the degree where there's nothing left for the folks who are doing anything on stage. And I think it's not because of any other reason than there's a really big lack of educational content for how to do that in a way that is not scary and not so that you get on stage and it sounds boring or it sounds less exciting than, a mix that somebody sat in their bedroom and worked on for 40 hours, so.
Yeah. I think it's twofold. Like in my opinion, I see that people either like there's the lack of education, like you said, for sure, but I also think there's a laziness of people who just want to play on CDJs. Like for real, I know of a handful of people that could use Ableton, like they know how to do it, they just don't want to because it takes more effort.
Yeah, and I think that also there isn't. So I'm a big time Beardy Man fan, and I don't know if you've ever seen his thing before, but he uses Ableton to create what sounds like finished music. But he does it all with his mouth. Records his mouth into buffer loopers and sends them through millions of effects.
Sick.
It's the coolest thing. If you haven't ever watched his performances before, he stands starkly in the face of the idea that you can't do it live and do it. I mean, he's on a degree of, I'm pretty sure that guy is maybe one of the most creative people I've ever had the pleasure of talking to. But I think that essentially we're kind of in a situation just in general in the world where everything has been black boxed. So people don't necessarily understand how things work. They just use the end product. So your cell phone or your even your DAW, you know what I mean? And when Ableton first came out, the idea was it was a software dedicated to enabling ideas for performance, right? And then over time, the user base has kind of pushed it toward, can this software support this wild idea that I have musically, but not necessarily on stage? Can it do this interesting granular thing that's going to take a lot of processing latency just to make the idea happen? And so the user base sort of informs the company as to how they should react. And I don't think it's anyone's fault. And I think that, there is potentially a degree of laziness, but I think at the end of the day, there's a general unawareness of the way that you might set up something to be able to record something instantly, to be able to have scenes that change every aspect of what people are listening to take the audio and to manipulate it in ways where when it comes out the output, it's been properly gain staged and clipped so that by the time you're playing in front of people, you're still at like a negative 7 or 8 LUFS level so that it still sounds as loud as these performers. Like there's a lot of things that are difficult to do without a fair amount of education. And at the end of the day, also, if you're not doing something deliberate where people are actually seeing you, like Beardy Man is singing and talking into a microphone, or a band is playing guitars and pianos and drum sets. So it's very easy to see that deliberate act. If you can't connect with the music or the artist and what the artist is doing, it's going to be boring. So you might as well play CDJs. But if you can see them do something deliberate, that's when you have, you've made a compelling show. So I mean, long story short, I'm just trying to eventually kind of, take this space and this crazy following that somehow this channel got and like work on the angle of trying to get a small, hopefully powerful user base of people ready to perform live and do it live and kind of take a little bit of that stage pie back,
Yeah, there's some people out there I feel like that are like really on the forefront of that space too. If you're familiar with like Laura Escaday and her Transmute program, she does a lot of that. She's been on the podcast a few times, and I think we're starting to see maybe some more people who are getting more creative and not just settling for like the status quo of like just being a space bar button and hitting play and then like jumping around on stage. Like I think especially for a lot of I think there's more instrumentalists now who like are true instrumentalists, grew up as like guitar players or vocalists or whatever, that are starting to recognize like what you were saying of bringing more of that live element too. And it brings more energy to the stage too, when you can actually see like, oh, this person's actually doing something I could hear. It totally adds more energy to the show for sure. And I think people definitely resonate with that. And a lot of DJs, I think, have to rely on the production value of what's going on stage a lot of times because they don't have that live component. So I don't know if you could do both. I think that's
Oh yeah,
really cool,
that's the
really dope.
ticket. Yeah, I mean, like if you
Yeah.
can perform and then you can have a good time. I think one of the hardest things to do is to perform in a way where you're making compelling things happen constantly, but still being able to engage with the crowd. You know, it's a really hard equation. It's not simple at all, and I think that there are ways to make it simpler. But yeah, that's a really good point. It's not easy to just simply make compelling things, but you know, that all comes down to setting the thing up right. Like I think a lot of people
Mhm.
that go to concerts don't also realize that it's a very common thing to have a computer that's off stage running Ableton Live, and there's a guy launching scenes in Ableton Live that are controlling various aspects of the show, whether those are audible aspects or those are automation aspects for the visual show. Because Ableton's such an able, pun intended, MIDI sequencer and OSC sequencer. If you use it that way, you can make it do all kinds of things. Like you can automate, you know, really big bands that have like crazy complex setups. You can automate their presets in their world. This is a super common thing. I have a couple friends that have gone on tours where they have used Ableton off stage to simply change lighting setups and
Mhm.
things like that. So it's the technology is being used, but not so much by the people that are actually on the stage.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's very true. That's true. Like I know several artists who run redundant rigs, but the redundancy is actually just for the lighting and like CC value changes and control changes and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Not even really affecting much of the music. So it could definitely be used for a lot of applications. Have you played with the connection kit pack?
Yeah,
That
yeah.
thing is that thing's awesome for all kinds of use cases for automating shows.
For your listeners who are trying to get visual MIDI feedback from Ableton's Looper, this has been a problem, I think, since the very inception of that device. Like I use it a lot. I loop my guitar with the band, and in EarthCry, I'm using it to do buffer looping and stuff. But you can't get it to report over MIDI its state. The only way to do that
Mm.
is to use the connection kit with OSC send, and you essentially the state of Looper is actually output, but it's output as a float. So it's either record, stop, play, or overdub, and it'll actually report that. So you can report it over OSC, and if you're using like Touch OSC or something like that, it will actually show up. So you could use the
Cool.
connection kit to go to an OSC device of some kind, and that OSC device could spit out CCs, and you could send that back to your MIDI controller. I'm
Oh,
sure
that's dope.
I'm
Never
sure
thought
people
of
that are
that
super
actually.
deep into that, like they get it, but it's kind of hard to explain to somebody who doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily use that stuff.
That's interesting. I don't really use the looper that often. I've kind of resorted to CliffX,
Hmm.
which is a whole different black
Oh
hole
yeah,
that honestly
super
might not
deep.
be necessary for most people, but uh yeah, I don't know. Have you ever played with the CliffX for
Oh,
live
I'm a
looping
CliffX
stuff?
power user. Yeah, I definitely
Yeah,
use it a lot. I also have lots of trouble with it because if you've messed, have you ever messed with the scene capture?
a little bit,
It,
not much.
my problem with it is that it's like everything I've ever wanted. It's like the ability to capture the state of the entire Ableton set or a track or a device, and then have another state, capture that, and then use that ramp feature where you type like ramp in capital letters, then you type in the milliseconds, and then you can make it morph from one state to another.
Mm.
Super useful, but the problem is that if you want it to happen on a dime, if it needs to change like over 10 parameters, it'll never hit on the downbeat. So there are things about CliffX that aren't snappy enough for
Mm.
what you want it to do. And for BPM ramping, love it. Use it all day. If you want to go from like, you know, we have a song in the band that goes from 75 to 90 beats per minute over the course of like 8 bars. We kind of like do like this like speed up. And I used to have to jump on this BPM increment pedal button. I'd just be like leprechaun jumping to, you know, get the band to go faster. You know what I mean? Because the click track would be in the drummer's ear.
Yeah,
And now CliffX does that for me. So things like that it's
nice.
great for.
Yeah, I ran into that problem a while ago as far as like changing from scene to scene and having like slow BPM automation of the tempo.
Hmm.
There's actually a Max for Live device that somebody made called Tempo 2, and it does that really well.
Cool.
You just drop it on anything. You don't have to worry about CliffX, and you can just automate it in a dummy MIDI clip or something. It works really well.
Yeah, all the Max for Live stuff makes me feel like a dummy because like like I know that I should probably take a dive down that rabbit hole, but everyone I talk to says Max for Live, man, it's like they could have designed it in such a better way, blah blah blah. They say that API, like to try to find out things, is so cryptic, and there's only video to look for certain things, and it's like I know that that's probably something that I should do, but I thus far have only like I have like a very small tertiary understanding of Max for Live and like how to use like Node and like all that stuff. Like I just don't code. It's not.
Dude, I learned the absolute minimum of Max for Live to pass the Ableton certification.
Oh
I
really?
don't know I don't know anything about Max for Live really. But I'd much rather rely on somebody else to make the tools I need than go down a black hole of spending, weeks and years of like learning how to build my own stuff from scratch. I'd rather just outsource it to somebody else who wants to do that for me.
Yeah.
Spend my time in other ways.
Well, there comes a point
Yeah.
where you are setting up a performance, or you're who knows what. You're trying to engineer some sort of in studio solution, and at some point you have to ask yourself, am I an engineer or am I a musician? And you have to,
Mhm.
try to figure out how best to stay in your lane. And
Yeah.
I think I have a lot of trouble with that, because when I discover a rabbit hole that's compelling, I get real stuck into it. And then, weeks will go by and I'm like, man, like what was the point of any of this? Like I've figured it out, sure, but like I could have been
Yeah.
working on music or something.
And having a lot of stress and questioning the meaning of life at 3 a.m., like after 4 weeks of troubleshooting.
Well, things have changed definitely now, because it's like I used to have 4 hours to edit my kick drum or whatever, and now I have 4 minutes because I'm a dad. So I have
Yeah. Yeah.
legitimately, and honestly, it hasn't slowed down my output. So those of you who are worried about all that, instead, you start to prioritize things, and you start to, I don't know, like I feel like the things don't sound different. They sound just, I'm just less obsessive about everything now. I'm just kind of like, all right, this is the time that I've
Yeah.
allotted to do this task. I'm going to do this task right now, and there we go.
Honestly, that's a beautiful thing, though. I think you have to have that mindset at some point. Otherwise, you just get stuck in a feedback loop of just working on the same thing over and over. And then I think a lot of like newer producers don't finish enough tracks because they give themselves too much time or they don't set deadlines.
Or they get stuck into some super technical something that just means
Yeah,
nothing, and no one will know that they did it.
exactly.
There's some field recording they had to have, that they had to travel to get, and all that stuff.
Right. No, that's very true. Yeah. Do you ever use like weird fun samples or like Foley in your tracks
Oh,
these
all the time.
days?
It's like it's every track has to have some sort of like audio in it that is related to the theme of the song. It's just it's a superstition for sure, but it's like I just really enjoy doing that. If the song
Yeah.
is dedicated to something, there's a lot of little whisper tracks and secret tracks, and I came up listening to like Nine Inch Nails and stuff like that, and that was like a big part of
Classic.
Trent Reznor's music is to put those kinds of sounds, special secret sounds, in the music.
Mhm.
And if you phase the left and right speaker, you can all of a sudden those will pop out. I used to enjoy the crap out of that. Like there was a way I figured out how to use my I had a Sony old boombox, and you could set it up so that if you push the play button down halfway, the tape read head would like read both sides at the same time, and it would invert the phase, and I would be able to hear all kinds of things that were wrong. And then I could hear like everything that was in the hyper stereo would come to the center, and you could
Yeah.
hear all these like secret whisper tracks and stuff, and you're like, whoa, what is that? Like then you get on early internet forums and talk about it. And so I
Yeah. People are like they're sacrificing goats in their music. It's evil. It's like there's some weird conspiracies going on about like old like metal bands doing that kind of stuff and backmasking. I remember that.
Yeah, we put an Easter egg in our last album. If you played it was on vinyl, if you played it in reverse, it gives you like a secret code that you can put somewhere that I only a couple people have figured it out thus far, so I don't want to like give it away
Oh,
here.
that's
But
wild.
yeah, if
That's
you played the
cool.
vinyl backwards, it would give you a secret cipher that you'd have to figure out a code, and you can use that code to access extra stuff. But we
That's
just,
amazing.
it's fun stuff to do. And
Yeah.
it's always been like it's such a waste of time. But at the end of the day, like if you're looking at things from a utilitarian standpoint, it's a waste of time. But it's art, so like have fun with it. Why not? Yeah.
Exactly. It's something to talk about. Maybe the one or two or three fans that actually figure it out or find it out are probably just going to love you that much more anyway. So,
Yeah, I have this like really funny idea. I want to like I live in Asheville, so the Smoky Mountains and the Blue Ridge Mountains are just, I can look out my window and see them, and I
that's
have this
cool.
idea of releasing an album, but you have to find it. Like you legitimately like have to, we're going to like, maybe like we'll make like the lyrics to the song sort of like clues. And then like I was thinking about like having like a thumb drive for each of the different tracks, and you have to literally find it. And if you do find it, you get to own the track. So you get to like collect the royalties
Oh,
from it or whatever. So it's like incentivized. I
interesting.
think that'd be really fun to do. We've been talking about doing this for years, but
Yeah, that's cool, man. There's a lot of people doing that and digitalizing their music in crypto. Like, I don't know if that's something you'd be interested in, or like having it as an NFT release that like
mhm.
somebody can actually own the rights or whatever to it, or find it in the cyberspace. Flostradamus did something like that. I talked to him about. I didn't fully understand exactly what he did in that world, but he's a smart dude. It was really cool. I was like, it's amazing. He had a vape pen actually that had a code on it, and when multiple people logged into the same place with the NFT that was on the actual vape, then they could access like certain special bonus content and stuff from him or whatever.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many different ways you could put music out these days, and it's like this whole idea was like kind of like in stark contrast to all the digital technologies. This was more like, all right, now you have to literally like get an excursion together, get like a backpacking rig and a tent, and like get miles into the woods if you want to find this, and like, it would have to be like, B-sides. It couldn't be like our like, top material, because at the end of the day, we can't afford not to release that to the general public. But like, it'd be really fun to put out some like really interesting, like weirder tracks in the middle of the woods or something.
Yeah. Yeah, you totally could. That'd be pretty sweet. Put like a tracking code on it or something, make people go hunting. It'd be fun. You talked a little bit about like you're like trying to really move people into the creative realm of how do you set up your live shows outside of just like hitting play and doing the regular stuff and pushing that boundary. So for you with EarthCry or Papadosio, has like your live setup and thinking about the technical ways you perform your music changed the way that you're writing the music?
Yeah, because it's always a conversation of, yeah, we could do that, but can we do it live? Yeah, we could do that,
Yeah.
but can we do it live? It's usually, yeah, we can do that, and we're going to figure out how to do it live. And it takes a good amount of time sometimes to figure out how to make a certain thing happen live. But with CliffX and a couple other, tools, you can pretty much do anything. And like, it's just a matter of whether you want to go that ham. You know what I mean? And,
Yeah.
I have been recently using more program change in Ableton than I used to. And there are, like recently, I don't know if you ever used Infiltrator.
Mm-mm.
Devious Machines Infiltrator is kind of like Tornado. It's a multi effect.
Oh, okay.
And it takes program change. And this is probably insignificant to a lot of people. But if you are doing effect processing and you need a extremely different effect than the last one you just had 5 seconds ago, this is probably the ticket, because you can do there's like it's like a multi effect. So you have like, every filter style you could think of: comb filtering, multi-band compression, like OTT, and spectral stuff. It's just got pretty much every effect you could think of, and you can call up different effects on a dime by sending a program change. So, you know,
Mm.
uh, that is enabling us to do more than we've ever been able to do before. That one change that the developer decided to implement program change really, really, if you, so like imagine if you're a guitar player with a pedal board. At this point, I'm starting to be convinced that I may go full digital with my guitar effects, because I'm already digital. I'm using a fractal guitar
Mm.
pedal,
Nice.
which is a modeler, and they do a really good job. But I got to
Yeah.
say that I've been using guitar modelers on the computer, and Ableton's guitar modeling is great, but it's pretty dated and it could be a little bit better. And the best one that I found is the UAD's Fuchs Overdrive 50 amp,
Okay.
and I just can't believe how good it sounds. It's frustrating how good it sounds, because you could mic up an amp and not get as good of tones as this thing, and it's amazing. And so I've been thinking it'd be really funny to get a Mac Mini, just the lowest level Mac Mini you can get, and get a tiny display and get a
Yeah.
little soft step and have that be my guitar rig, because I could just use the
Brilliant,
soft
dude.
step to switch between Infiltrator effects going into the Fuchs UAD amp, and there you go,
Totally.
boom. It would be a lot smaller than my fractal setup is huge. It's like big and heavy, and
Ain't nobody got time to carry all that for every show. Like that's been my struggle too, as like a one man band, is like, do I need to carry my full electronic set and my guitar and an UE and my microphone, my push and my APC 40, and like the list just keeps going, and I'm like, dude, it's too much. Like trying to like simplify before I start going out and playing more shows again. That could be a real struggle too.
Yeah.
It's like streamlining and really kind of figuring out, okay, how do I get away with less while still, pulling off a great show?
I'm telling you, man, like if you haven't checked out Touch OSC or Lemur on iPad,
Yeah.
you can stack these iPads are this thin. You can have so much control in the smallest footprint. It's nuts. And ever since I kind of discovered that, I am slowly but surely gradually moving all my control over to specifically Touch OSC, because it's so programmable. It's so easy, and you can label everything. I mean, that's the other thing. Like a lot of these MIDI controllers don't have labels, and what they do can change. And on Touch OSC, if you want something to change, you can actually use local messages. If a control changes, it will change dynamically with what you're doing. And another thing is that you can touch a control and it does a thing called grab. So your finger can be all the way over here and you're still controlling that same thing, because you're wiggling your finger over here. It grabs it. So you can't touch other things. A lot of people look at these setups and they think, oh, that's too fiddly. I wouldn't be able to get to the parameter I'm trying to change, but it's because of grab. I mean, I can't believe how much control you can pack into nothing. So that's actually a big part. That's a big module in my Ableton Live course for dedicated to live performance and looping, is a whole chapter on Touch OSC, because I'm so convinced that it's the future of control.
Yeah. Touch OSC is amazing. It could do a lot of things. I had a good conversation, went pretty nerdy with Jules Jensen not too long ago. He's like an absolute wizard when it comes to Touch OSC and CliffX. So he's taught me a lot about that world. And that's probably even still more than a lot of people need, but it's amazing to have that option if you want more control and flexibility, for sure.
Yeah, and if you don't want to travel with a bunch of stuff, I mean, at the end of the day, like I can, my EarthCry set, it comprises of, it's not sitting here, is it? No, it's not. I have a UC4. It's like that little Fader Fox UC4. It's like this big, 8 little sliders and the knobs and stuff, and then just an iPad. And that's it. Yeah. And I'm doing full on buffer capture of my stems, so I can, do looping of the different, so I have like a drum track, a bass track, a melodic track, and then special effects and vocals. And so those are the 4 stems I'm working with, and I can capture any amount of buffer length of any of those and then loop them. And the amount of like real estate it takes versus the amount of sound and the different things that I can make happen with that tiny little setup that fits in a backpack is crazy. So you don't need to travel with, I guess that's another thing. Cause I mean, a lot of, it's crazy, man. We'll get to an airport and, we're friends with a lot of the producers that play these festivals, and they'll come up to us. This has happened a lot. They'll come up and they'll be like, wow, you guys got a lot of stuff. And like, yeah, it costs about $700 to check all this, and meanwhile they nod at that and they're like, yeah, that's hard, huh? And they're like, all my stuff fits on this thumb drive, and they put it in their backpack and they go on their merry way. And it's like, it's pretty funny, but I mean, like, it's starting to change though. Like, these control apps are just crazy. And then Loopy Pro is almost going to come out with their VST implementation of Loopy Pro, the iPad app, and that's going to change the world. That single thing is going to change live looping forever, and I can't wait for that. Yeah,
I've heard of Loopy, but like I don't know a ton about it. So what would make it a lot different or change the world?
So Loopy Pro solves a lot of the looping issues that a lot of people have. So right now, if you want to loop something, most loopers require you to hit record and then to close the loop by hitting play or overdub or whatever the button is to close the loop. There's a thing called retrospective, I think is the word you would use for looping, where instead of pushing record ever, it's always recording. So Beardy Man uses this software called Augustus Loop, and it's a buffer. It's just a delay. Okay, so the delay is playing, but you don't know that it's playing until you close the loop. And when you close the loop, you actually choose what the timing division is that you want. I want the last 2 bars of what I just played. I want the last eighth of a bar. I want the last 4 bars that I just played. And so there's only one action. That's huge, because if you're on stage, there's a lot of pressure to, okay, this is it. Here it comes. I'm going to hit that record button. And then there's a lot of pressure, like, okay, I got to hit the play button right at the right time. That's really hard to do. What's easier to do is to keep playing until you're like, yep, that was the take. And then you hit close the loop. And so what Loopy Pro does is it takes both of those ideas and takes them even further. So you can do that retrospective looping, but all the buffer loopers that exist right now on the market, such as Augustus Loop and these other ones, they don't have a way to do undo. They don't have a way to take audio and elastic stretch it. So if you're changing the BPM, Ableton's looper, for example, if you change the BPM, unfortunately, what it'll do is it'll pitch up or pitch down.
Yeah, it's not good.
If you're doing clip looping, that's great, but there's no way natively to delete and add clips. And if you're doing scenes, then guess what? If you launch a different scene, you're not going to play the clips you just looped. So there's a lot of issues that a fully robust retrospective looper will solve for live looping musicians, and that's exactly what Loopy Pro does. But it's been stuck in the iPad environment, and the Loopy Pro developer has pretty much put in every single feature that I've ever wanted in a looper. And the barrier to entry for me has been that, I want to use Ableton effects to sculpt the audio. I want to be able to use clippers. I want to use all the things that I know to do to make the audio nice and hot and loud and sound great. And I haven't been able to use those in the, iOS environment. So apparently there is a VST version of Loopy Pro that's imminent for release for the computer musician. So that's really exciting, and I can't wait. And a lot of the looper communities that I'm in on, like Discord and stuff, like all we can talk about is pretty much, all right, when's Loopy Pro coming out for Apple? Because that would be amazing,
Yeah, that sounds really fascinating. I'm writing notes down. I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yeah, it really, if anything, just download Loopy Pro for iOS and just check it out. You can just get a demo. You don't have to buy it or anything. You'll see what I mean. Just the visual feedback of being able to see a loop in it's a waveform, but it's represented in a circle. I think once a musician sees that, then you're like, oh, this is how it always should have been done. I don't know why no one thought of doing it this way before. It's like so for your listeners who have been loopers before and they've kind of left it because of frustrations with the interface, we're entering I really believe we're entering a new realm of looping where you're going to see a resurgence of looping artists because of the technologies. And I got to say that the new 505 looper, the 5 circles in a row, the hardware piece, really well implemented, really well designed. They understand that the biggest hurdle for live loopers is to sound high fidelity. It's difficult to do, but they have all these like their output stage effects are really nice. They have this thing called the natural compressor, and it kind of scoops out the low mids, which build up when you're doing looping. And so they're forward thinking. They're thinking about how can we make live looping a thing where it's compelling. It still sounds good coming out of a PA. There's less feedback issues. I'm just really excited because I've recently seen some live looping performances that have just totally blown my mind. And like once you give these people that have this amazing musical talent the right technology, I mean, lights out. It's going to be awesome.
Okay. Yeah, dope. I need to check that out. It's really interesting. Are you familiar with AbletonDrummer.com?
Yeah,
Toby?
that guy's amazing, man. What a homie.
I love Toby.
Have you had him on the podcast?
Twice.
Nice.
Actually.
Oh, okay. I got to check those out.
Pretty sure twice. If not, Toby, and you're listening, then you're invited to come back. He's the man. He actually released it's a really, really simple dumbed down looper. It's called One Button Live Looping with Ableton Live. It's a really long name, but he's the man, and it's really simple for anybody who's like getting into looping and they've had trouble with Ableton's native looper. It's simple, it's user friendly, and it just gives you like an undo, play, loop, overdub option, and has its own pop out window that like you can MIDI map, and it's just like really simple, and you could put it on every track that you want to live loop or do a master. And it does factor in, I think, some of that buffering you were talking about. I've played with it briefly. It's like $25 for like the whole suite of live looping stuff, and it works pretty well. He just released it probably a couple months ago.
I saw that. I got an email from him. Unfortunately, what I'm trying to do does not involve a computer screen at all. I pretty much am moving away from looking at Ableton at all because Touch OSC even allows, I wonder if he made it. That would be really funny, but there's a Max for Live device that can take your VU meter, turn that VU meter data into CCs, and then I'm making a fader go up and down for my different loopers and my different outputs and stuff like that, so I can see where audio is in my set. And so sometimes, if you need to be able to have some sort of reference to see, like, all right, which looper has buffer data in it, which one doesn't. That little Max for Live device that turns the VU meters into CCs really helps, man. It's awesome.
I know what you're talking about. I saw that somewhere. I don't know who made it. I have to look that up.
Yeah, our lighting guy, Dustin, Videometry, shout out. He uses the same Max for Live device to listen to our drummer's kick drum and my guitar signal and like everything else in it. He projects that signal into different parameters that are affecting things in his visuals for the show. So that really basic technology has allowed us to do a lot of really interesting visuals on stage too. So folks who are into that realm, especially folks that like use like Ebo Suite or something, like there's a lot of really fun things that you can do when you can capture VU data or output audio data, RMS data, and spit out CCs. It's really fun.
I've done a little bit of that using the connection kit, sending OSC and MIDI into Resolume.
Ooh,
that's been pretty fun, and it's really simple. Anybody who wants to get into VJing, like video DJing, I mean, Resolume's really fun. It has a free trial, and it's really annoying because like every 90 seconds, it's like Resolume. But other than that, just turn off the audio, just mute Resolume's output of audio. But it's dope, and there's so many things you could do with it, especially syncing up to Ableton Live. And I like what you're saying with the Mac Mini, because I'm actually thinking about getting another one, because then you could just plug them in together, Ethernet, and they talk, and you could have one video machine and one running Ableton, and they're stupid fast, man. I have the M1, the first Mac Mini M1 that came out, and it's fantastic.
They're fantastic machines.
Love this thing.
I love it. The Windows users can no longer argue. Like, you got to give it up. I'm using a M1 Air right now. And I will simultaneously be editing 4K footage, filming 4K footage, and like doing like multicam, like YouTube video, all at the same time. The computer has no fan; it barely makes any heat at all. And I'm doing it, and I realize it's not plugged in. Whoops! It's not. It's like what? Like, I can't believe how good these machines are. And the other thing that's crazy is that they keep making them better, and I guess the 3 nanometer chip is almost out now. Like, what? Like, I think these are 5 nanometer chips in the M1, which is what that means is that there's a distance between the transistors. And so that distance, the farther the transistors are apart, the more heat the machine makes. And so really, when it comes to computational power, one of the biggest bottlenecks is heat. So when you get the transistors closer together without shorting, you are actually reducing the heat. And because you're reducing the heat, you are allowing the machine to run faster, because it doesn't need to figure out ways to cool itself. I know that's like a total layman's explanation, but that's what's
Makes
up.
Sense.
So these new 3 nanometer chips are going to be crazy, man. Like the M3 chips. I just read something where the new MacBook Airs that are going to be 13 and 15 inch wide are going to have the 3 nanometer chip in it. It's like, it'll be a lightsaber, I mean,
yeah,
crazy.
Yeah, it'll be able to do your laundry and take your kids to school. It's like, it's a really smart, powerful computer. Yeah, and it's silent too. That's one thing that I noticed right away, is when I was pushing this computer really hard, they don't have fans because they don't really overheat. So you don't have to worry about any studio noise from a computer fan.
Oh man, you can hear my YouTube videos from 2 years ago, and it's like, it's embarrassing how loud that fan is in the microphone. And then all of a sudden it's like turn on a dime, and all of a sudden, first of all, I started doing 4K, and then there was no noise and half the hangups. And that was admittedly a MacBook Pro. I call it the Millennium Falcon, but it was the MacBook Pro from 2012. It still works somehow. It's on its 4th display, because that one, for some reason, it burns through displays. Like, I'll get the pink screen, and then all of a sudden it doesn't work, and I've had to buy like third-party displays and reconnect them and stuff. But it's on its 4th one, and I finally was like, you know what? These M1 machines, they look pretty rad. So I ended up getting the little Air, and this little Air is just, I maxed it out. I got the 16 gigs of RAM in it, the better GPU, and the bigger hard drive. But yeah, I couldn't be happier.
I think if you're going to buy any of the newer Macs, it's definitely worth maxing it out if you need that power, because you can't really upgrade it later. You're just kind of stuck with what you have.
Yeah, my whole plan was to make it almost the same size as the iPad Pro, and it is. So when I fold the M1 Air up and I put the two iPad Pros on it, they're like a perfect little stack that slides in a smaller backpack. It's like that was kind of the idea behind it. But I've seen recently there's this guy, pretty popular YouTuber. I'm going to totally forget his name, but he made an M1 Mini thing you could slide the M1 Mini into, and then a display thing that connects over USB-C. I think it's like for an iPad Mini. So you can contain the entire thing in this 3D printed little like thing that slides into a backpack. So you could turn a Mac Mini into a laptop essentially.
Oh, interesting.
So pretty hilarious like use case. But for somebody like me who's trying to build maybe a guitar pedal board out of something like that, totally makes sense, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I know you use the soft step. Have you ever played with the Looptimus?
What is the Looptimus? I have never even heard of this
I'll
thing.
show you.
Oh, okay.
Little show and tell. Yeah, this is I tested pretty much I've tested almost, I think, every foot controller on the market at this point in my life, including the soft steps. And this is my favorite. It's built, I think, more for guitar players because it has kind of that feel,
yeah, tactile,
like that tactile touch.
Mm-hmm.
It has 20 banks, and
sick.
It was made by an Ableton certified trainer in Chicago, and he's like really big in the church scene and does a lot of playback for churches and mega church stuff. But he built this for like basically anybody who wanted to use their feet for Ableton. It's just
amazing.
You can MIDI map it. It's dummy proof.
Amazing.
But it feels good, and it's not too heavy. You can plug in like you can connect them, actually get multiples of them, and plug in like an external foot controller too. Can run MIDI out.
It's nice and
It's got
small.
USB. It's got a powered hub, but it doesn't have to be powered.
Mm-hmm.
You just power USB.
It's nice and small.
Yeah.
For me, it's like with the whole idea of like saving space. I've made myself a road case. What I've done is I've decided I can't take up any more space than that road case. So if my rig has to fit in it. So the soft step is hard to beat when it comes to space, basically more than anything else. I really wish that I had the room to add the clickable. I've always appreciated the million click. I don't know what there's a specific name for the jack that, or the press button thing that you can do a million clicks on, but that, you know, you'll see them on like kind of higher end guitar pedals. That is my favorite pedal of all time, because you know the moment that it makes contact, you can push your foot on it and push it in a little bit, and then you can click it down. Like that's the best tactile control for your feet. I'm convinced. But at the end of the day, I just don't have room for it. So it's soft steps it is, you know?
Yeah. The thing about the soft step that made me nervous is there's a couple times where I double triggered it.
Yeah.
That scared me.
Yeah.
Because it's so squishy. It's like almost like you're stepping on a fruit gusher or something.
Yeah. I like power slam it. Like, I mean, on stage, yeah. I'm like doing like, I'm like Mario power slamming it. Like I like, I'm so worried that it's not going to trigger. Like, I also figured something out. Like, you don't want to use notes unless there's a reason for it. Like, if you use notes when you press the soft step, when you pick your foot back up, by default, if you use a foot on command, it will send a note off command when you pick your foot back up. I didn't realize that. I thought it would only send a foot on command, but it makes sense because you wouldn't want the controller to think that you haven't sent it a note off message, especially if you're doing momentary stuff. So I realized, I was like, oh crap, I got to use CCs. And for those of you out there that are using the soft step, I'm also going to be doing a soft step series. I am really scared of doing that because the support questions, I already get thousands of support questions about soft step. They made a controller that I honestly think it's too powerful. Like, I think there's too many options. And so like a lot of folks, they'll plug it into Ableton and it's sending pitch bend information by default when you plug it in. And everyone's like, it doesn't work. And it's like, we got to put it on CCs or notes, man. You know, a lot of people don't know that very basic fact, but there's so much more to that poor little thing that, you know, yeah, I really like the device. It's amazing. But again, I really wish I had room for something like that. Looptimus thing looks awesome. And
oh yeah, check it out. It's like I said, it's dummy proof. Anybody could use it. It's so easy.
Does it have expression pedal inputs?
It does. Yeah.
Nice.
Yep. Yeah. So you can hook it up to another external foot switch or an expression pedal.
Is there more than one, or is there just one? Because that's the soft steps.
I think there's one for each.
Oh, yeah. Nice. Okay, cool. Yeah, because the soft step only has one input for an expression pedal, and that's a big hang up for me.
Yep. No, it's got one foot switch, one expression.
Nice.
It looks like. And then you could also do a MIDI in.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Right on.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really dusty. I need to use it more.
Dust is the great equalizer when you feel bad about buying gear and not using it. Yeah.
Oh, dude, that's the story of my life, man. That's kind of how I feel right now about the Genki wavering. Have you played with the wavering?
I saw ads for that thing. It looks fun. I didn't get it. No.
I don't use it, but it's a blast. Like when I do play with it, it's like a fun party trick, right? If you're on stage for like one song and you want to move your hand and like have a filter wobble, and people are like, "Oh my God, he's making a wobble with his hand!" Like that's fun. But actually, I think the best use case for it is for doing triggering of like even live looping. Da Vinci actually made a really good YouTube video of how he uses the wavering for tracking and recording in the studio for looping. And like, so there's like three, I might be butchering this. There's 3 different button commands you could set at controls. He uses like one of the buttons for capture. So if he's just playing piano and messing around the studio, he's like, "Oh, that was a good idea." He just hits capture. But you can map it to like your looper or anything else you wanted to. Wow. So yeah. And like, if you're on stage playing guitar, you could put it on maybe your right hand that you're picking with. And then like, when you're done, just like tap and then trigger something to loop. Might be really easy than using your feet too, or giving an addition to your feet.
Yeah, I mean, getting back to that idea of being deliberate, that's another really good use case. I saw this guy using a theramidi. What does Moog call that device? It's like a MIDI theremin.
I know what you're talking about. Jules, actually, the guy, the CliffX nerd I was telling you about, my homie, he was telling me he uses that in his studio for triggering, I think, visuals.
Whoa, really?
Which is
far out, man.
It was crazy, yeah.
Yeah, I saw a show though. This guy was like, he had it mapped to an Ableton Echo and was using it to do like dub delays, and he would throw his hand up and he had it figured out so that it was like the perfect like slush puppy, like when someone's like, yeah, he was like slush puppying this, like making these, like every time his hand would go up, it would send the audio to the delay. So you know what I mean? Like, and I was like, man, what a great idea. Like, because I mean, like, I don't know if everyone knew that he was doing that, but those that were paying attention, even if you weren't a musician, it was such a deliberate move that you could see, oh yeah, that's like great idea, So there's definitely good like deliberate use cases for these technologies. There was that Orba thing that does the little, it's a little like circle thing that, you can play the different notes on, and you can move it like this, and it does like parameters and things like that. First time I saw my lighting guy, he was using 2 Wiimotes and one of those like Wii Fits, and he was like going like this awesome. And like doing the visuals with like.
That's sick.
Yeah, I remember all that. That was like the Wiimote was the first time I experienced a Bluetooth thing that if you moved it, it would like do different CCs. But there was the latency was just way too slow to get anything real done.
Yeah, I think Matt Moldover was like one of the first people to really do that. I remember seeing him do that like probably like 7 or 8 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
That was pretty wild. Yeah, he hacks all kinds of game controllers and turns it into like musical instruments.
I love that.
He's a wild dude. Jules, I was just like searching through my notes, and have you heard of Proxy MIDI?
No.
It's by a company called Copper and Cedar. It's like $180, but it's kind of the same idea with that Moog theremin you were talking about. It's like this, like it looks like almost like a hockey puck, and you plug it in, but it's like motion tracking, so you could play with your hand moving across it with different sensors.
Oh, I've seen this thing. Yeah, that looks like a lot of fun too. Yeah, that's kind of like the MIDI theremin too. Yeah, that's pretty. Oh, look how nice and small that is.
It's tiny.
See,
but it looks fun.
I'm all about it. You want to sell Anthony something, make it small, and I'm all about it.
Right. Throw it in your book bag.
Exactly. Wow, that's rad, man. I might look more into this.
Yeah. Honestly, I'd need to. I might hit him up and be like, "You guys want to send me a free one?" Like, that'd be pretty cool.
Man, see, that's just the thing, isn't it? It's like all the companies that want to send you free stuff, you're like, because then you have to do a review for it. Yeah. And it's like, and then the companies you really wish would send you free stuff, like they'll never talk to you. It's like, oh, come on.
Yeah, maybe. I guess it just depends on who it is and
how good you are at like sending that like cold email. You know what I mean? Like
that's true.
I want to get better at that. You know what I mean? And I had a really good experience with Relish, the guitar company. I played one of their guitars. They have this system. It's not. I wish it was here so I could show you, but you can take the pickups out by just pulling on them. It's magnetic, and you can slap another pickup in it. So let's say you're like a session guitar player, you need like a single coil for one song. You can just flip the pickups. It's insane. Such a good idea. Amazing. So I wrote the guy. I was like, "You guys are nuts! Like this is the most fresh idea in 30 years of guitar technology. Like I can't even believe that this is a thing, you know." And he's like, "Well, who are you?" And I was like, and then I started sending him pictures of the band playing Red Rocks. You know what I mean? Like, you know, we're a really big deal. I promise. You know. And then they sent me an artist deal, and I was like, oh my god! It was like, so I had that one like amazing experience, and
that's so cool.
Shout out Relish though. They really are. It's like a Swiss guitar company. They make a aluminum frame for the guitar that has like wood facings. Pretty high end instruments, but at the end of the day, like they can sound like any guitar. So like if you're like one of those people that has like 50 guitars in your house, you know what I mean? Like at the end of the day, you could get a lot more done with a lot less by having like a guitar that can just literally by magnets. It's just magnets. Like even the back of the guitar comes off with magnets. Amazing. It's such a good idea.
So you couldn't necessarily use, and like I'm completely ignorant when it comes to the guitar world, but could you use other guitar pickups? Like, could you remove that from another guitar and put it on this?
Yeah, you have a little mount. So the mount has physical wiring that you solder. But once you've mounted the pickup to the little brackets that they have, the brackets, they like it's the most satisfying thing ever too. It goes shlink, and it's like like, nice. And it feels like you're like loading like a rifle or something. You're like like
that's all ready to go.
I love it.
That's pretty cool.
But yeah, so I have a success. I mean, long story short, I have a success story, like cold reaching out, cold emailing a company.
Love that for you. Yeah. That's good. Yeah, I'll take all the free stuff. That's fun to play
with.
Yeah, please and thank you. Yeah, I've done that for this podcast too. I've reached out to certain companies and been like, "Hey, do you want to send me some free stuff? I'll talk about it." And they're like, "Sure." So I'm still working on UAD. I still want their free plugins, but they're hard. It's a hard sell.
UAD, man, what a like,
give anything away for free.
What a difficult platform. Like I have an 8P. I saved for so long to get it. Like it was like, you know, it's like the dream, you know, to have this thing and to offload some processing, especially because I got it when I was still using the old Millennium Falcon, and it just allowed me to do a lot more, you know, and processing wise. But now they're rolling out. Did you see this? They're rolling out native instead of doing you have to have the hardware. They're now rolling out their plugins as like native plugins, which is
they call it their Spark plugin bundle.
Actually, they're releasing the plugins themselves. It's not just Spark is a thing. That's like I think it's a subscription. Is what Spark is, but they actually are selling now their plugins because I think that what they're realizing is that they can't keep up with. I mean, think about the market. Like, think about how many folks are using just a Scarlett, right?
True.
And they'll never be able to use like the 1176, or you know, they'll never be able to use these really nice pieces of hardware, emulations, if you will. So, you know, I think they sort of wisened up. They realized, okay, you know, our user base could be a lot bigger.
Oh, totally, man. You're right. You're absolutely right. The analog modeling world of plugins is like exploding, and there's so many players in the game now. I think it's a good move for them to move away from having to own their interfaces or buying an accelerator to run plugins.
It seems to be like a kind of a not a mass exodus, but instead like an infiltration of like what used to be only available analog is now like a digital thing. Like, I don't know if you ever messed with VCV Rack, but oh my god, if you've never
done, it's free.
It's free. It's not free as a plugin, but it's free to use, you know, standalone. And you can get a lot done standalone. I mean, you know,
you could route it actually.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, I think what's nice about using VCV Rack is that the story with Modular is that, and I think that any user will tell you this, is that like, it's really hard to convert a modular patch into a song. And so at the end of the day, VCV Rack is like slowly but surely convincing me that my hardware modular is just useless, because the amount of time that I spend building up a patch on it, I can just build it in VCV Rack. And the only thing that I'm really missing is to be honest, the only thing I'm really missing is I love the Make Noise DPO oscillator. Nothing digital can make that sound. I'm convinced. It's just something about it that's just really, really nice. And then distortions, like, you know, In order to get distortions that sound as clean as they will sound, or not clean, but as in like low aliasing, especially when you're really going ham on like a fuzz, you got to have an analog distortion. So, I mean, outside of that though, a lot of the things I do with modular have to do with granular stuff and have to do with things that you absolutely can do digitally. And a lot of times better and faster if you save the patch inside of like a larger Ableton set. So I really, really got to say that like VCV Rack has really changed the technology game. And today I was using it to do MIDI stuff. I wasn't sending any audio out of it. I was just using a trigger sequencer going into a thing. There's a module in there that's like a shaper. So it's kind of like LFO tool, but I was sending triggers into shaper and they were spitting out different envelopes and I was routing those envelopes into CCs and those CCs were controlling things in my Ableton set. And I sort of realized I was like, wow, you could legitimately create any custom control interface with this as well as being able to do really rad audio stuff. So, I mean, if any of your listeners are modular curious, before you spend all that money, just look at VCV Rack, man, because it really can get you 99% of the way there.
Oh yeah, and it's great for people who are just still like even beginners trying to learn more about sound design.
Big time.
I think that's an awesome starting point for people who are like maybe scared of the modular world or like only been producing a couple years and they want to go deeper. It's a great way to learn.
Yeah, it's definitely a great way. Also to learn that it might not be for you. You know, I mean, modular is it's a time consuming. It's expensive and it's a time really even more than it is expensive. It can distract you so much that you don't put music out. And I've seen this happen a lot. And I actually put out a bunch of EarthCry albums that were modular patches, or at least that was the beginning of them. But I knew right away that I got one of those DB25 connectors, so like I could send audio signal into that RME interface that I used to have, and I had multi-channel audio coming out of the modular, and that's really hard to do if you don't set that up. And if you don't set that up right away, once you unplug the damn thing, like you've lost your patch. It's gone. It's gone forever. There's no save button. And so it really is easy to go down that rabbit hole and never put music out. Totally. So you got to be real careful in that in that world.
I know there's ways around it in the hardware world or domain, but like I think that's one reason why I haven't invested more money into the modular world, because I want to be able to save patches and stuff and recall it later. And if the knob position is there, it's going to always be there.
Yeah, big time. Big time. Yeah,
that's one thing I love about my Moog Sub 37 is it's like the best of both worlds, because you can always recall the banks and presets and based on the positions of the knobs.
Yeah. And you can, and it's just that giant analog oscillator sound that is just so hard to get. And there's a little bit of instability to it. And because of that tiny little bit of instability, you love it. There's something you can't put your finger on. There's also that Dreadbox Typhon thing that they put out. Another really good solution, kind of the same, really, really wonderful device. If you've ever check that out. But yeah, both of those are kind of the same idea, where you have two oscillators that are comprising of a mono synthesizer that the idea is that the filter and the oscillator just sound so undeniably huge. And they kind of like, they double down on what makes analog synthesis so nice. I really, really like both of those pieces. I kind of miss having a Sub 37 in the studio. I really need to get one back in here because, it's quick. Especially if you have one of those, if you have a external instrument and you save it in your Ableton browser and you have it already set up for the Sub 37. I love that. You just drag it in there and boom, it's in your set.
Yeah, definitely. I need to play with that more.
Mm-hmm.
I was speaking of like being a guitar player and modular stuff. Do you know Ricky Graham? Does that name ring a bell at all?
No,
he's a certified trainer. He's really into the modular thing, and he's a great guitarist as well. But he told me about a guitar pickups processing. So like you can integrate your modular with your guitar, and it's like a guitar pickup you just stick on your guitar, and you run it into like your modular system, and so you can have like your guitar affect your modular sounds. It's crazy.
You can modulate your modulators, man. Yeah. So there's these different modules they make where it's got a 1/4-inch input. And for those of your listeners that aren't aware, the modular world needs a lot hotter of a signal. So you have to not only amplify to line level, but you're going way above line level. So there's these amplifier modules that are also envelope followers. So the idea is that you're playing right into the modular, and then it's creating voltages based on not only the signal itself, right, but also a separate signal that is listening and you can adjust the attack and release times just like you would with like the envelope follower on Ableton. And then you turn that into voltage, and then that little cable now can plug into other things, and it can affect other things. And yeah, there's a lot of joy there to be had for sure.
So much joy.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, I probably will never actually do it myself because I don't have a modular A, and B, like I'm not that much of a guitar nerd.
Mhm.
But yeah, Sci-Fi Research
Sci-Fi.
has one that he was talking about. It's like CYCFI. They have their, I think it's called NU. It's like NU, their modular string pickup. So like you can convert it MIDI as well. I believe you can also play MIDI out of it.
That's rad. Welcome to the Ableton podcast, where we convince you to buy all kinds of things you don't need.
Exactly. Right. That's half of my podcast right there. No regrets. Yeah.
That's funny.
Well, coming back full circle to you, because this is your episode, Seed to Stage. By the way, I didn't realize I've watched a bunch of your videos before until like I went back and revisited your channel. I was like, oh, dude, I've watched this like many, many years ago. How long have you been doing that?
Oh, I don't know. I feel like it's been like 4 years or something. It was originally a channel made specifically to show some friends of mine how to do things, and so I made some tutorial videos just for them, right? And then they're like, you should just make this like public. And I was like, okay. So I just put them up there, and then I was like, oh, like this really is interesting because there's a lot more people watching this than I thought. And I put a bunch of like keywords in the videos afterward, like months after I put them up. And then there's a whole lot more people watching them. And then I realized, I was like, there isn't even a video on showing you how to use more than one MIDI controller in Ableton on YouTube, period. And I was like, that is crazy. Like, most people are probably making the assumption that you can only use one MIDI controller at a time. And that's still a pretty common assumption. So that video alone, I think that's my most popular video, how to use multiple MIDI controllers. I don't know. I haven't looked in a while, but
really?
I mean, we're talking over like 500,000 views.
Yeah.
Let me see here.
You've got like 88,000 subscribers. It's solid.
It was all because, I mean, I was using, so when things really started to take off was when Ableton, their content department hit me up. And I immediately was like, can you get me certified? But they hit me up and they're like, would you do a video on X, Y, or Z? And I was like, sure. And so I made it for them. And then I didn't know they were going to put it on their blog. And then I went from 2,000 subscribers to like 1 million. Like it was crazy. Like
it's awesome.
And so then I was like, oh, this is actually a thing. And maybe this is my like ticket to getting people to do shit on stage again. That was kind of the idea. Yeah. And so like ever since then, so when COVID happened, we were pretty much grounded. The band was doing like these like live streams. It was really fun, but it was really weird, like ending a song and hearing no applause and just looking at a webcam. And I was like, all right, I got to do something else with my time. So I started filming these courses. I was like, all right, this is a crazy, crazy, thing to try to do, to make courses in a maybe one of the most saturated areas of education on the internet, you know what I mean? Like digital music or whatever, especially with Ableton. But I noticed that a lot of the courses out there were very focused on specific things, and they weren't like, complete guides to anything. So I was like, all right, I'm going to make complete guides to Ableton. And so I made 4 courses. One of them is songwriting and composition. So it's kind of like, me revealing my process, and then the process of a lot of friends of mine, because I cover things that I don't actually do myself, for how to make songs. Then mixing and mastering, which is more like how you can use Ableton, which a lot of people don't think of Ableton as an A to Z software, but I think of it that way because I've always done it that way. And you can do it with bands, even though the kind of predominant thought is that you can't mix a band in Ableton. You definitely can. And we have even our own music. I know of much bigger bands that have mixed their mixes in Ableton, but some of our songs have like over 10 million plays, 20 million plays. I don't know how many at this point. So you can definitely make like, chart topping music with Ableton. And then I do a sound design one, and then I do the biggest one, and the one that I'm most stoked about is the live performance course. So, each one of them is 25 hours long, and I have a Discord, which is super active, and Discord has singly changed my life for the better. For folks who don't use Discord, but Discord, I no longer have to be on social media. I literally Discord essentially takes the entire internet and and filters it down to what you want, and the people that you want to hang out with. And
Yeah. And less ads.
yeah, so we have, what's cool about the Discord is we have a bunch of super engaged students, and they're in there, and some of them are doing tours now, some of them are putting out albums, and they'll put their songs on the feedback, channel, and everyone's giving them feedback, and they're not worried about it, and everyone's really positive. It's a positive environment. You can get people's opinions on your mixes, and you can ask questions about your live performance setup, and it's just become this like Ableton think tank, and it's really been super rewarding. So the channel's gone really well, and then this like course environment's gone, it's all gone like pretty viral. It's been sort of nuts. And so during COVID, I was like, oh, this is cool. I can totally do this. And then touring picked back up, and I was like, oh God. And then we had a baby boy. So
oh snap. So you're not busy at all?
not at all. And also we're building, there's tractors literally running under my house, and so everything's sort of happening all at once. But I feel super blessed to be in this position. It's crazy like how many things have gone really well for our family right now. So yeah,
that's great.
Everything's great. And
awesome, man.
I can't complain about being able to tour again, because man, if there's one thing that I missed heavily, it was playing for people. Feels real weird playing in a studio to a webcam. I don't really want to do that.
No, I feel that. Yeah, no, I totally hear you. I remember my first show back after COVID, and it was like kind of a weird experience. You go 2 years without like actually playing live, and you're saying, just playing to like the internet online on a webcam and then playing live again. It was like, makes you a lot more grateful and thankful for the opportunities that you have again.
Yeah. I questioned my ego. I was like, is applause just something I need? Is that like something that like, and I think it's validation. You know what I mean? I think there's some level of validation there when people are letting you know if you did a good job or not. You know what I mean? Like,
yep.
Even the lack of applause with an audience, it's informative. Instead of this just cold, dead, silent, like weird, like lens of a camera that you're looking at, it's a very strange experience for sure.
Yeah, there's a lot there. I don't know, that I feel like I have to constantly do an ego check for myself, because like you said, like, are you playing the shows for that applause, or are you doing it for the love of doing it? Like that can be a tricky balance
Big
for
time.
some artists.
Yeah.
I think it's good to have that evaluation of yourself. Actually, do you know Quincy Jones?
Oh yeah.
He has a book that came out not too long ago called 12 Notes, and he talks a little bit about that. And so if anybody's looking for a new book on like the perspective and mindset of music from somebody who's like the most successful producer of our generation, it's a fantastic book. It's a short read too, but he talks about like how to create a really good song and his experiences. Such a good book.
Yeah. Wow. I should probably get that. One of my favorite books about a similar topic is A Music Lesson by Victor Wooten. And man,
Victor's the man.
Oh my God. It's so he's the man, and he's also a bit frustrating because he'll be like, oh, music theory, it's super easy. It's just, and like you can tell that his mind was honed specifically to do what he does. Like that there's something about the build of his body, the from down to the cellular level. Like, well, how do you slap bass, Victor? Oh, like this. It's like, okay, cool, man. Like, but this book specifically, he personifies music as a being. And something that was in that book that will always be with me is that if you're playing with other musicians, it's like being in a conversation. So like if someone's talking, you don't interrupt them. You can support them though. And so supporting what they're saying is like harmony, right? Speaking when they're speaking is like not accepted generally in society. So how would it be accepted generally on stage? So like it was
that's good.
The book is chock full of things like that. These ways of conceptualizing and framing music and the way that you look at it and the lens that you look at it through, that really I think is just plain helpful, and like one of the better books I read on music. I really enjoyed that one. It's A Music Lesson by Victor Wooten.
Yeah, I have to check that out. He's phenomenal. I saw him do a workshop in Indianapolis a long time ago, and he's a classic example of somebody who's not only mastered his instrument, but is like really inspirational and feels the music on a deeper level than most instrumentalists I've ever met or seen. Like you can just tell when he's playing, like he's in his own little world. He's completely lost. He's in another dimension. Love Victor.
Yeah. One of the greats.
Absolutely, man. So what's next for you? I mean, you talked about you have a kid, you have the Discord thing, you're doing your seed to stage content, you're touring with Papadosio.
Largely, I'm trying to manage it. I'm trying to keep all the balls in the air, but at the same time, like I don't want that to sound as if it's like I'm stoked. I couldn't be like more stoked on like how things are going. But we had this basement build. That's kind of the biggest thing. I need to get that finished for multiple reasons because we're trying to have a family, first of all, and we need more space. Most of the basement build that we're doing is not the studio. The studio is just one room in it, but it's just space. My partner is a pretty successful painter, and she
Cool.
has she needs a studio to work, and so essentially we're just trying to build out our lives up here, and then the band is putting out an album here soon, and we've been really trying to finish the mixes. You know how it is, like I think this could be louder, that could be quieter, it's endless trying to figure that out. So that's happening in that realm. And then with EarthCry, I'm gravitating away from composed music in general and gravitating towards a live looping setup where that's pretty much what I'm doing. Not because I think any other reason other than I really want people to see what's possible. It'll be akin to like Beardy Man's style performance, but I'm going to be using guitar as the main input as opposed to a microphone. So
cool.
that's a pretty lofty goal. It's to even touch what that guy's doing it takes years of dedication and programming and stuff like that. But I really want to, if I could do anything with what I've done with what I've learned in my life, it would be to convince people that there's more to stage performance than CDJs and fingers in the air. So, and I don't mean that as a slight to anybody that's doing that. I use CDJs, of course. I've done thumb drive gigs, but I find myself more fulfilled and I have more fun, and there's a lot more to do. And you can generally also, you have a lot more freedom to change it up and, look at the crowd and react with the crowd and like be there in the moment when you have the kind of flexibility that the technology that exists now. I'm just excited and I want people to see what's possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure you'll inspire a lot of people who maybe need like the technical know-how to actually pull it off. So I think that's cool. That's a great mission. I support you.
Thanks.
Yeah. I'm on that mission myself right now.
Radical. Yeah, I'd love to see one of your shows. I think I've seen you perform before.
What year did you play at Electric Forest? Multiple years, probably.
Oh man, back in the day. We haven't been back there. It was pre-COVID the last time we played there.
I played 2016.
Oh yeah, maybe we were there.
I'm actually thinking you guys were also there. I'm pretty sure Papadosio played that year.
Yeah. I wouldn't have been there unless the band was there anyway. So, yeah.
Oh, I might have been there at the same time.
Radical.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'll probably not start playing shows until the end of 2023, maybe 2024, because I'm just working on new music.
Oh, rad. Okay.
Sampling a bunch of random weird shit, putting it into my tracks.
Nice.
Yeah.
Trying to find that perfect Foley sample.
Exactly. Yeah, I've been ripping a lot off of YouTube too. Do you know what squishmallows are?
Squishmallows? No.
Yeah, it's like it's like the softest pillow you'll ever find. It's like an occult following. Like people who, like I know people who have like dozens of them, but they're like giant pillows, or they make small ones, and they're like the softest, squishiest little pillow. But they all have like a name, and they're all like animal themed. So they have like I have a sloth. His name's Jerry. It's like really comfy. But I have an EP that's like squishmallow themed, but it goes really hard.
That's amazing. Yeah, I'll check that out for sure. I was going to ask you if they make a sound when you squish them and that you were recording that sound or something.
That would be dope. No, I sampled. They actually have a TV show though that I sampled like a couple stuff from. Ripped off of that. I don't know if I can legally release it, but I'm going to anyway.
That's funny.
And then but if you hit it with a drumstick, it does make like a soft padded sound.
There you go.
I've done that. Some of those samples. Yeah, it's like the dumbest thing I've ever done, but I'm having fun doing it.
Nice.
So
nice.
But yeah, man. Well, dude, I'll let you go. I know we've been hanging out for almost an hour and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, where's the best place for people to connect with you? People want to follow you online.
So if they're interested in the like learning Ableton kind of from my style of teaching it, you can go to seedtostage.com, youtube.com/seedtostage if you just want to check out who I am and get into my universe. Papadosio.com is for the band, and then EarthCry.net for my solo stuff. And we will be entering some new avenues. I think we're going to enter the Twitch space here soon, and we're going to be doing some. I know I was talking down on streaming, but we're going to be doing some really fun things there as the band on Twitch, which should be fun. And new albums coming out soon. There's a lot of things coming up. But yeah, thanks for having me. This is awesome. I've been going back through your catalog and listening to some favorites, and I don't know. This,
thank you.
I'm glad you're doing this. You're doing the space of service. You're really filling a void. I was surprised to learn that this is one of the only podcasts dedicated to this. So it's awesome.
Dude, I was surprised to learn that 3.5 years ago. I was like, I literally didn't even expect it to be a thing. It just got to the point where I was like talking in my phone. If you listen to the first 5 episodes, the sound quality is complete shit. and then I was like, I wonder who I could actually get on the podcast. So I just started hitting people up, and they started saying yes, and here we are. But I appreciate you listening and supporting. That means a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
So thank you.
For sure.
Cool. Well, thanks for hanging out, man. I'll let you go. Everybody definitely check out Anthony's stuff and Papadosio, EarthCry. I'll include all the links in the show notes as always, so make sure you check those out. Give him a follow. Tell your friends, your mom, and we'll see you hopefully again on the podcast someday.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Thanks, Dan.
I'll definitely catch a show in the near future. Hey, big thanks to Anthony for joining the podcast. Make sure you give him a follow wherever that may be. If you want to be the first to get new episodes and content I am sending out through the newsletter, then go to liveproducersonline.com/newsletter and you can join for free, and it'll be super cool. Also, I'd love to hear what you think of the podcast and new episodes or guests that you would like to see more of. So feel free to hit me up anytime you want. My email is dan@liveproducersonline.com. Send me a message, say hey, tell me what you think of the podcast, tell me what sucks about it. And yeah, would love to connect with you there. Otherwise, Instagram @Ableton Podcast. You can also connect with me there as well, and the podcast team. So much love. I'll see you in the next episode.